College Democrats and Republicans. My name is Jonathan Portman. I'm a junior at Auburn.
And my name is Joshua Deutschendorf. I'm also a junior at Auburn.
All right, so to really set this up, I'm going to tell you all the format. So it's going to be 3 minutes to answer each question between both Republicans and Democrats. 3 to 4 minute rebuttal after that, so 10 to 11, or 9 to 10 minutes per question. We're going to start them off between opening statements between the two parties. And a brief introduction. Yeah, we're excited. Yeah,
Hello, my name is Ian Gunn. I'm a junior majoring in law and justice here at Auburn University.
My name is Thomas Williams. I'm a sophomore majoring in political science here.
I'm Luke Troutman. I'm the president of College Republicans here at Auburn University.
My name is Madeline Bear, and I am also in the College Republicans, and I'm a political science major.
This is the Democrats' opening statement. I'd like to start today by discussing 3 essential issues that most Americans agree are primary in their decision this November, that being the economy, the budget, and immigration. First and foremost, I would like to address the economy. Both of us on this stage would like similar things for America. We would like to see the GDP grow. We would like to see Americans be able to afford food and housing. But the critical difference is differences in how we intend to get there. My opponents on the stage intend to incorporate large corporate tax cuts, of which could see considerable negative effects for the lower classes of America. Additionally, they would like to institute large tariffs on foreign nations in order to counter their effects on our domestic economy. Such tariffs could institute a massive global trade war and result in 1.8% decrease in our global GDP, completely offsetting even the highest estimates for a 0.8% growth in our GDP due to Trump's tax cuts. It is critical for our economy that we vote for Kamala Harris this November. It is critical for immigration and for human rights that we avoid reinstating Article 42, which resulted in thousands of assaults, rapes, robberies, and other forms of Article 42 was an absolute tragedy for our nation and saw multiple failures when it comes to critical security and the defense of our fellow Americans. I would like to turn it over to my co-host here to tell you more about our health care plans.
I think it's critical to vote for Kamala Harris due to healthcare reasons. Not only has the Biden administration capped the price of insulin, which has led to a great increase in the quality of life of most Americans. Also, Kamala Harris plans to expand ACA, which will cover the most critical and vital underrepresented minorities in our nation.
Turn it over to the Republicans now for their opening statement.
Thank you. Our opening statements are a little more simplified. So I would just like to read directly from the GOP party official 2024 platform. Republicans believe in liberty, economic prosperity, preserving American values and traditions, restoring the American dream for every citizen of this great nation. As a party, we support policies and seek to achieve these goals. Our platform is centered on stimulating economic growth for all Americans, protecting constitutionally guaranteed freedoms, ensuring the integrity of our elections, and maintaining our national security. We are working to preserve America's greatness for our children and grandchildren. And so, as my counterparts mentioned, we want similar things for this country, but we have different means of getting there. And we believe that our party has the more effective and more proven methods of achieving these goals that we all want to accomplish. With that being said, the issues that we're going to hopefully tackle, based on the questions asked to us tonight, are going to be immigration and the absolutely horrific way that the Biden-Harris administration has handled that issue. We're going to talk about the economy and how in 2017 to 2020, we saw unprecedented growth under Donald Trump and his policies. We're going to address the tax cuts and how we hope to help seniors and younger Americans. We will also be addressing the energy crisis, foreign wars,
for that. First off, we just want to say thank y'all for coming out to the debate tonight. We appreciate y'all taking time out of y'all's busy schedules to come out and support. We appreciate y'all being engaged civically, and we'll begin with the first question. So our first question stems with the recent natural disasters of Hurricane Helene and Milton. Earlier this month, Hurricane Helene and Milton both made landfall on Florida and caused major flooding damages in North Carolina and East Coast. Over 150 people have lost their lives in two natural disasters, and billions of dollars in economic damage and property damage occurred. Many residents affected by the hurricanes report that the current administration cares more about foreign affairs than its own citizens. How do you believe the next administration should address natural disaster relief, and do you believe the current administration has done enough to aid recovery efforts? We'll start with Democrats.
First of all, I'd like to hit with this question that it is tragic what has occurred recently, but I do personally believe that our government has done everything in its power that it can to assist these people. We must keep in mind that Congress is who sets our budget. National disaster relief is set at a strict amount every year. And whether or not we believe that should be increased is a separate issue as to what's going on right now. What we should hit is the core cause of these disasters. This year we have seen 3 hurricanes. These are all critical results of of global climate change and warming, of which we may not all agree on to the extent, but we can all agree is causing changes in our climate. It is causing multiple shifts in what we understand to be the natural climate of this world. And that is causing deeper issues like multiple climate crises a year, in which our government cannot necessarily stand up against.
Furthermore, I would like to tackle the question of if this administration has been big enough. According to all governors of the affected regions, they have said that they have gotten all the aid that they requested. About $2 billion has been spent in hurricane recovery. Once again, this administration is doing all that it's financially able to in the budget.
To pick up where my colleagues left off, I would like to address that FEMA, which is our natural disaster relief that we have in this country. The citizens that were affected by this are supposed to be getting checks for $750. Most of them are not even getting these checks. I'm from tropical Florida, where my hometown was completely wiped out a couple of years ago during Hurricane Ian, and recently was completely underwater, 20 feet of water again this fall, and I assure you that $750 is not enough to deal with any of that, as I'm sure we all are aware. I'd also like to say that the budget for FEMA this year in 2024 was $47.6 billion. They've spent over half of that federal funding already this year, and the hurricane season is not even over. I'd also like to say that this year, the United States has provided $175 billion, that's B, billion, in foreign aid to Ukraine. So just based on that, that's over 3 times the amount of our federal budget to help American citizens. We need to help Americans first. We are in the United States of America. We help Americans first. That is an important part of keeping the world safe. If we're safe, we can keep other people safe. I'd also like to say that climate change is not affecting hurricanes. As my governor, Ron DeSantis, talked about a couple of weeks ago, the worst recorded hurricanes happened in 1940, not in 2024. So as we can see, hurricanes are not getting any worse.
Yes, to pick up where she left off, the climate has been changing ever since the universe was created. We're no longer in an ice age, Pangea no longer exists. With that being said, that doesn't mean that the environment isn't being harmed. It just means that it's not happening at the precedented rate that our Democratic counterparts believe that it is. And part of addressing that issue is the search for new and clean energy. So part of the Republican Party platform is that we want to boost nuclear energy production and research and step away from the lithium mining and other methods of energy that our counterparts push.
Thank y'all. And so to sort of guide the questionnaires and rebuttals, we have come up with a question about, so both y'all mentioned FEMA capital spending and just the amount of money that FEMA has spent in general. With the current rate of spending according to natural disasters, do you believe that Congress should better prepare and administer financial aid for FEMA regarding this year?
Absolutely. I mean, like, we've already spent half of our budget on these 3 hurricanes, and like, we must prepare for other natural disasters, be it like wildfires or additional hurricanes. I would like to go back to this point of the Republicans have repeatedly tried to slash FEMA spending. And so, you know, the $750 is, of course, it's not. Like, I come from Gulf Coast, Alabama, which has been repeatedly affected by hurricanes. And, well, once again, like, $750 is not enough. So, I think it should be a bipartisan effort to increase funds. Onto the Ukraine topic, $175 billion to Ukraine. This is not like cash assets. A lot of the times, this is old military equipment that we are already planning to replace. It is in our budget to replace this. And so we are simply providing equipment that is simply going to go to waste, be it missiles that we're going to have to refurbish, be that like tanks that we've already planned to replace. This is not simply us just setting money on fire.
Yeah, I'd like to pick it up where he left off, and that I think that's very important to understand, that it's not one money pile we're drawing from. Cutting spending in Ukraine does not mean inherently increasing spending for FEMA. Congress decides our budget. The spending we are providing to Ukraine, as he stated, is often defunct military equipment we are providing to them in their moment they need it the most. As for hurricanes and their increased effect, while I do agree that it is a statistic truth that in 1940 some of the worst hurricanes hit this country, I would like to state that the increasing rate of hurricanes, the increasing rate of large climate disasters is something we'd like to focus on instead. But getting back to the main point, FEMA should be expanded. Our budget should be expanded to address natural disasters here in our country. However, that does not necessarily mean abandoning our allies abroad and leaving them up to a terroristic threat from a larger, more equipped nation. Thank you.
Do I have time to rebut?
Okay.
Excellent. First of all, I'd like to say that FEMA spends an exorbitant amount of money on providing aid to people who are not American citizens, instead of providing aid to American citizens. Obviously, that is not in the country's best interest. I'd also like to say that I understand that the budget is set by Congress and that limiting foreign aid doesn't necessarily increase FEMA spending, but I'd also like to address that my governor, Ron DeSantis, just swooped in and saved the day after Hurricane Milton. Completely different situation than Hurricane Helene, and was able to use state funding to fix these issues. And I think we really need to focus more on what states can do and less on what we're doing in the federal government, and allow for states that are affected by these disasters to pay for these disasters.
Yeah, with that being said, I totally agree with that statement, is the federal government should be at will of the states. And so in the case of North Carolina, where those events happen, they should be able to reach out to the federal government and request the help. And I think that they've done that. They just have not seen the response that's needed or not.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to the next question. This question will pertain to inflation, which I know has been on everyone's mind for the past few years. The current annual inflation rate is 2.4%, which is back to levels last seen in February 2021. Prices are still 21.4% more expensive since the pandemic-induced recession began in February 2020, with only about 6% of the nearly 400 items the Bureau of Labor Statistics tracks cheaper today. How can policymakers protect low and middle income households from the most harmful effects of inflation, such as increased cost of living for essentials like food, housing, and healthcare?
So we're going to start with the Republicans this time.
Well, obviously, inflation has been a terrible problem. It has skyrocketed under the Biden Harris administration. The consumer price index has rose 19.2%. Now, as peak gasoline prices saw a 46% increase. And so the way that we're going to want to bring those down is just by doing what we did the first time when we were in prosperity, and a good economic situation. So we're going to reinstate the tax cuts that they've done away with because of this belief that taxing the rich automatically helps the poor. That doesn't redistribute money within the class ladder, so to say. Is all it does is just take it and distribute it back to the federal government. And as we mentioned earlier, these people that are wanting to see these benefits aren't getting it. And so I don't know about y'all, but I wouldn't want to trust my income and these resources that I need being given to me by the government. I would much rather be able to use more of what I've already earned myself.
Just to add a little bit of a personal element to this, I've been in hospitality for years. I do a lot of upscale hospitality work, and one thing that I've really seen in the past couple of years is that when the wealthier folks aren't seeing as much money come in, they spend less money. And then what happens? Your servers, your dishwashers, your kitchen workers, your retail workers, everybody that's working those jobs that we're all working as college students and those entry-level jobs, we're making less money because they're spending less money. So why would I try to cut myself short by taxing a rich person that's about to pay me my money?
And I'm assuming that we're more than likely going to argue the principles of trickle-down economics. But right now we're experiencing trickle-down debt. Is our employers are unable to repay their employees and make investments, and so it's causing the rest of these people to suffer. So if you have a boss that has a business, like the restaurant per se, is under their current, Jonathan, we sat in a meeting last night about tiger diving, and we're asking, is there any way that we can combat these prices? They said that our prices are based off of the market surrounding the U.S. economy. And so it's affecting us right now as students because of these policies that are out here this administration is making.
First of all, I would like to start out here by clarifying one simple point, and that is that the president does not have a button underneath their desk that controls the economy. For the past 2 years, unemployment has been underneath 4%. Median wages have gone up 18%, particularly for lower wage income earners. And consumer spending, despite higher prices, is up 11%. By every macroeconomic measure, the economy is doing okay. We are recovering. Prices, I can say to everyone in this room, do jump up due to increases in the demand and due to decreases in supply. Prices do not jump down. They take time to readjust to market indicators. Inflation did reach a 40-year high in June 2022 due to energy and food pricing, but what we have seen is a continued decline in that. Today, as they stated, inflation is at 2.4% and has not been over 3% in over a year. I should remind everyone in the room that the target inflation percentage for our government is 2%. We are approaching a fine statistic, as difficult as it may seem. And I would like to also remind everyone in the room that Kamala Harris, at the most, could add $3.5 trillion to our national debt, while Trump's most conservative estimates are $8 trillion. We should ask what this and his tariffs would have on an impact on inflation. His tariffs could see up to a 0.3% increase in inflation in this nation by 2028. And his policies on immigration could see a further decrease in our GDP. These are just some numbers.
Yeah, also, just like touching on housing real quick. The Kamala Walls administration promised a $50,000 tax credit on first-time homeowners. This is pretty reasonable. It's a good indicator that to help people like us, like the 25, 30 something first-time homeowners. This is more than Donald Trump has promised to do, in which creating freedom cities, in which he plans to take large swaths of federal land, national parks, etc., and tear down our nation's great wilderness in order to erect cities for people to live in.
Yeah, I would like to pick it up there. Freedom cities, I would like to say, are one of the most ridiculous plans conceivable. And that's just a flat analysis. The idea that we can somehow usurp federal lands to create large swaths of communities in place of creating homes for middle-class Americans is despicable.
I'm sorry, that's time. We will now open it up to rebuttal from the Republicans.
We are going to ask that you'll hold your response to around 2 minutes for the sake of time.
I'd like to jump in and say something right away about this tax credit or supposed tax credit, which I'm assuming you're talking about the housing stipend that she's talking about. All that does is increase housing costs because you're talking about first-time home buyers. Not everyone that's looking to buy a house is a first-time home buyer. So essentially, you're flooding the market with increased housing prices. And what that means is that those first-time home buyers, instead of paying $200,000 for their house, the price goes up to $250,000. And guess what? The family that needs to move into a bigger house because they're having another baby, they can't do that anymore because they have to compete at a higher price than they would normally have to compete at. It's similar to this small business startup that she's talking about, tax deduction. A tax deduction is something that comes after the fiscal year is ended. That's not helping start new businesses because essentially the money gets filtered back into the federal government anyways. That's not helping to start new businesses.
Yeah, that being said, I mean, you just have to look at what is actually happening. Like in my personal life, my housing here in Auburn, in the January of 2023, my lot rent was $390. In July of 2023, it became $465. In July of 2024, it became $585. So even if you say that the market's recovering, real people still aren't experiencing these effects. And so I understand, I give grace periods to both Trump and Biden because of 2020. Because during that time, you can't necessarily control what happened. But we're still not on track under Democratic leadership to see even growth and nor even the recovery that we're wanting. So with that being said, real weekly earnings, so your actual take-home pay, is still 2.3 below where they were when Biden took office. And then with also with that being said,
Sorry, for the sake of time, we do have to move on to the Democratic. I'm sorry. We will now open it up to Democrat rebuttal.
I would just like to pick it up where my opponent left off and say that we are on track for substantial economic growth. Under Kamala Harris, we could see up to a 1.1% growth in our national GDP, which may not sound like a lot, but is remarkable. The highest Trump figures state that he could achieve a 0.6 to 0.8% national growth by 2028. Kamala's figures are by 2026. Trump's projected inflation is 0.3%, while hers is 0.2%. And I would also like to turn back to the housing issue. This assumes a stagnant market. Kamala intends to build 3 million new homes for middle-class Americans and expand the market. Assuming that prices will automatically go up due to a credit is having a misunderstanding on exactly how the government can, the role the government can take within the market. We would also, as I mentioned, see a $50,000 tax deduction for small businesses, as opposed to tax cuts for the wealthy corporate owners. $50,000 for each small business startup could see our nation's GDP grow radically.
Yeah, I would also like to challenge the assertion that this $50,000 wouldn't help a small business. $50,000 can be a small lean per machine shop. It can be like multiple things. So it's just very difficult for me to see that this $50,000 wouldn't help like a small business in any way.
Yeah, we'll do one quick 1 minute rebuttal. This is a hot issue.
Yeah, so with that being said, is there any way small businesses get those grants? Anyone that has a small business application will not receive $50,000. That's just improbable for anyone. And so also with that being said, is one of Joe Biden's crowning achievements is his growth of the job market. And so let's assume that that is true and that he has created these millions of jobs, even though it was exposed a couple months ago that 800,000 of those jobs were falsely identified were actually not. But in 2019, the unemployment rate was 3.5%. 2023 it was 3.7%. In 2024 currently it's about 4%. So if these jobs are being created, then why are people not working these newly created jobs? And so there's just a miscorrelation between what their hoping happens and what's actually happening.
I would like to say that this is mainly an issue of consumer confidence. The president does not sign away some bill that creates new jobs. Consumers, industry leaders have to get out there and create new jobs. And what we're seeing is that a tax-deductible thing like this $50,000 grant to new small business owners would mean the creation of new jobs. It wouldn't just mean cutting taxes and saying that more money is better.
Once again, this $50,000 would create new jobs, right? If you're a restaurant, you're starting your new business. This $50,000 means that you could potentially hire a few more employees in that year, or and a new employee, and create those jobs.
And I would like to say that the estimated goal for raising our child tax credit to $6,000 a year would see 5 million new adults into our job market that had previously been kept back by child care restraints.
All right, and so to our next point is involving ongoing conflict in the Middle East. Today, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken visited Israel today in hopes of implementing a new ceasefire in the Middle East. With the recent death of Hamas leader Israel, escalating conflicts with neighboring countries, it seems the ceasefire is nowhere in sight. With the election less than 2 weeks away and conflicts in the Middle East only escalating, what do you believe our government's role, if any, is in regard to those conflicts? We'll start off with the Republicans. Try to stay here 2 to 3 minutes.
I'll try my best. All right. To begin, Israel is a great ally to the United States, and we like them to be democratic because they're in the middle of a hot zone of terrorism running amok. We have given them a lot of resources over the past year and some change. We still have Americans that are being held hostage by terrorists. This is unprecedented in our government that we haven't gone in with force, taken Americans, and brought them home. This needs to happen immediately. This is not something that we can just let happen. They are Americans, they are patriots, we need to bring them home. We need to continue to give them resources until they finish this conflict, until they can purge the terrorist actions that are coming in to their sovereign territory. It's the largest action that was taken against Jewish people since the Holocaust. 1,200 people were killed, 250 people were taken hostage. It is a humanitarian crisis that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, so with that being said, the ceasefire deal should be worked out and we should resolve this conflict. But as she mentioned, it needs to be resolved instead of this ongoing process. Now I think that the responsibility doesn't fall on Israel to accept a plea deal and they were the ones that were attacked to begin with. I think that Hamas and Iran, countries of the like, should be sympathetic to the organization that their government allowed to prosper and should free these hostages.
I think we can sort of help here. The notion that, like, we can all accept that October 7th was a terrible tragedy. But the notion that we should keep defending Israel's actions is absurd. They have moved troops into Lebanon, which, as Americans, I don't think we can justify the invasion of a sovereign state.
I'll stay on a similar point I had earlier with FEMA, in that our budget is set by our Congress. As a Democrat, I may have strong opinions about Israel, but the fact is that we as a nation must stand with them as our ally in the region, and that any change in that is going to come downstream from change in the region itself. Israel is a great ally, and they are surrounded by threats. However, Republican policy amounts to writing Israel a blank check and allowing them to do anything they please for national security in the region. We may all remember when Donald Trump pulled us out of Afghanistan, which is a positive thing for Americans, but we must remember is destabilizing the peace of the region, and for what reason? He moved the capital of Israel to Jerusalem. He recognized the embassy there, of which everyone predicted would further destabilize the region. Republican policy consistently neglects the need for a kind of careful hand when it comes to handling Israel, and they simply don't care what happens in the region in general.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good assertion of policy. We can't just keep handing them a blank check. We have to restrict weapons access to them. That's the only way the ceasefire is ever going to happen.
College Republicans,
So first of all, I'd like to point out that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were the ones that pulled our troops out of Afghanistan, and that was probably one of the greatest military failures in all of American military history. Kamala likes to brag that she was the last one in the room for that horrible atrocity that has seen veterans across America just absolutely in despair over the situation. 13 Americans were killed during that. I'd also like to say that the troops that were moved into Lebanon, well, first of all, that is a proxy of the Iranian government, which is essentially just a terrorist organization. So really, what they're doing is protecting themselves, because Hamas is protecting themselves with tunnels. They're moving in closer to Egypt. They're trying to contain the situation as best as they can before it boils over, and then we've got another huge Middle East conflict that we need to step into. Again, I'd like to say we have Americans that are being held hostage. That cannot happen. That is not okay. We need to get them out now, today. It's been over a year. There are American citizens being held by terrorists.
Yeah, so along those lines, we don't think that Israel is launching an offensive attack in the sense that they're looking for expansion into gain, because they're simply trying to defend what they've already been granted and has been recognized legally for decades. And so, also to your point, is these countries, they're harboring terrorists. And so they're fighting multi-front wars with Hamas and Hezbollah.
We will now open it up to Democrat rebuttal.
I'd like to start off with what exactly happened in Afghanistan. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris may have oversaw the literal removal of the troops, but when we look at who organized this campaign, it was all underneath Donald Trump. He left us with no greater plan. He did not involve the Afghani government in any of these talks, and he left us with an absolutely scramble of a situation of which no one was handled appropriately, and Joe Biden did the best he possibly could, and I think he did a great job. I agree with my opponents that it is absolutely untenable that we have hostages in Israel, or in Gaza at the time, and they need to be released. But if we want to talk about broader conflict in the region and avoiding a war, then I would ask, why did Donald Trump pull us out of the Iranian nuclear deal? The region has been destabilized by a complete off-kilter throwing of our understanding of how Iran could acquire nuclear weapons. They are our greatest threat in the region. We can all see that in the news. And Donald Trump pulled us out of the best chance we had at controlling their arms. We are still scrambling to try to find some way to fix that. And it's possible that Kamala Harris' government could operate with the moderate elements in Iran and could get such a deal through in 2024. A Trump campaign, a Trump administration would not.
Time for our next question. One of the biggest topics in our country right now is abortion and reproductive health. Roe v. Wade was overturned in 2022, leaving the legality of abortion and the timeline of permissible abortion a state decision. The right to IVF was also recently up for debate in Alabama, even though they ultimately decided to defend the treatment. With different states passing increasingly different abortion laws, is there a realistic path for national compromise, or is the issue likely to remain ambiguous? We'll open it up to the Democrats.
Yes, I think we need to have a national idea of what we want abortion to be. We can't just leave it up to the states, because throughout living in the states, we've had frequent medical crises of women who can't get the proper health care they need, which is completely untenable.
Personally, I believe that this issue is pretty much enshrined in the First Amendment to our Constitution, which my opponents may also use. I believe that that amendment does not only register a freedom of choice of religion, it establishes a wall between the government and between what people are freely able to do. The government is not allowed to select any kind of religion or credo to go by, but though some of my opponents may disagree, science is not a religion. Women have the choice to do what they please with their bodies. They have the choice to determine their future. Women who have experienced crimes or violations of their personal privacy have the right to determine that. And I believe that it is not the government's place to have any say in what a woman is able to do with her body. Whether she personally believes in that choice or not is up to her. But whether the government should be able to restrict it is a separate question.
Also, furthermore, the Supreme Court of Alabama's decision on IVF shows a deterioration on our fundamental values of separation of church and state. If you read the opinions provided by the justices, they frequently cite the Bible as the reason of overturning.
We will open it up to the Republicans.
First of all, I'd like to say, as the only woman on this panel, I think that I have some things to say about this issue, as it is, a woman's issue. First of all, the overturning of Roe v. Wade did not create a federal abortion ban. States still can make those decisions. That means that people can vote, which means people have voices. And in most of the states where they've put an abortion amendment up, the following amendments have been more pro-abortion than they were before. So if that is any indication. I'd also like to say that it's not really a woman's health issue because it's not my body. It wouldn't be my body. If I was pregnant right now, it would not be my body. It would be a human being inside of me. That is a separate human being, which means that that human being has rights. Now, Trump and the Republican campaign is not trying to create a federal abortion ban. That's not something that we're arguing about today. I'm just talking about my personal opinions. And just to give a little science, we were talking about science, a human being, as stated by biology, is that once the conception happens, that's a zygote, which means that is unique DNA, not like any other human being, which means that that's not my body anymore. That zygote, that fetus, is not my body. That's a unique human being that has a separate personality, separate body from my body. And also, less than 1% of all abortions are due to rape and incest. And I'd also like to say that from that remaining 99%, 87% are unmarried women. And the typical woman that gets an abortion is poor, unmarried. So really what we need is more support for women and less killing of babies.
Yeah, so I'd love to touch on that topic. So this is something that's really unique and intense here in Alabama. And I want to give some kind of backstory behind this rule and why this rule is. So, as you know, in vitro fertilization is the process of creating an embryo, then allowing the mother to carry it if it's not able to be created naturally. So, I believe it was a hospital in Mobile. I could be wrong, but it wasn't the same Alabama. So there's a hospital where 3 families had successful IVF treatments, and after that, those unused embryos are frozen and used in case they want to come back later and have more children to speed up the process of all the testing and everything. So with that being said, a random patient one day wandered into where his embryos were being kept, opened the freezer, and dropped and destroyed multiple of these embryos, ruining his family's chance of having more children without having to undergo this process. So the Alabama State Legislature ruled that embryos are life in an effort to protect against criminal activities such as that.
Democrats, y'all can have 4 minutes, and we're probably not going to do it.
It's like moving an idea topic. Yes, it was a hospital string. The ruling would have been within 36 months of divorce. The case was that this patient had wandered into the bath where a nurse was carrying a tray and while it's painkillers, the nurse dropped the tray and all 36 were. In that case, there is no moral way to say that that person deserved the sentence 36
Similar cases have been tried in the Supreme Court before, where people have done things that they did not realize would cause serious harm. And we cannot punish people, especially we cannot libel someone with 36 charges of manslaughter for a simple mistake. This is a tragic incident, and this isn't fair. And I do agree somewhat with my opponents that we should find some kind of middle ground here. But it's ridiculous to assume that these types of embryos are life. It is a scientific position. Returning to my previous point, what I was getting at is that we need to cater to the broadest number of people in our nation. There are people with different beliefs, there are people who hold different creeds, and we need to have laws that cater to the broadest number of people. And I believe laws that strictly define certain things like an embryo is a life inherently give certain credence to certain modes of thinking, but others can disagree with that.
Would y'all rather do one last guided question or open up for Q&A?
Q&A.
It's 7:48. All right, Q&A.
Yeah, if you would, please get a single file
of American energy and keeping America energy independent.
how do both sides see graphic play over the next 4 years?
We'll start with the Republicans.
So yeah, our energy independence plan is to go back to what we were doing, like opening of the Keystone Pipeline. And so Trump likes to say drill, baby, drill. And so one of our goals is to unleash American energy production. Is while we're in office, we were on track to become one of the largest energy producers in the world. Under Biden, we were reliant on other countries for our energy, such as crude and fossil fuel resources. And so, with that being said, is like we said, we want to invest in the nuclear energy because it is a proven, tried and true clean form of energy that, when managed properly, is better than fossil fuels, better than any other alternative energy source.
Drill, baby, drill.
Democrats, open to you.
I would like to address first and foremost that Biden did shut down the Keystone Pipeline. I'm sure we're all aware of that. However, he had a plan in place known as the Build Back Better plan to reinvest in certain solar, wind, and other forms of energy. The Republicans shut this down in Congress and made sure it did not go through. Trump likes to tout how Biden approved the Nord 2 pipeline, a line that was done by the time Biden got in office, and he had no choice but to approve. The Republicans have nothing but empty rhetoric, whereas we have a continued dedication to making our country reliant on clean energy by 2050.
Also, clean energy provides the base of jobs that Americans need. America is slowly becoming a more skilled labor force, and the ships that are needed to regulate and facilitate these types of energy.
I'm sorry, Democrats, but due to time restraints, we do have to move on to the next question from the audience. I heard a talking point on this side, which was that the government cannot tell a woman what she can do with her body. But however, we already have laws where it's actually double homicide if you stab a woman, or which basically shows that there's a human inside, right? But also, the government says that she's not allowed to drink alcohol or take drugs, even though it's just her body. So we actually do have restrictions on her body already when it comes to pregnancy. Do you think we should abolish these laws? And if not, is that a contradiction to your point? Thank you.
We will open it up to the Democrats.
I think that's a very good point to bring up. That is, but the key thing here is that these are laws that are applicable to a life that will come to term. These laws apply to a life that the woman intends to bring to term. Drinking, or for example, drinking is having a negative impact on the life once brought to term. A homicide in which someone were to stab a pregnant woman is preventing her from bringing that life to term. This is not the same thing as a woman or a pregnancy that was never intended to be brought to term in the first place, or would have been counterproductive to the woman's life.
Open it up to Republicans.
Yes, with that being said, as they mentioned, if she plans to carry it to term, well, the truth is any fetus carried to term will be a person. And then also, is I think we made it pretty clear over our platform, under Trump's personal beliefs, that while as a party as a whole, we want you to choose life, because we support life. But we understand that not everybody feels the same way. So that's why we've overturned rights back to the states, so that way you are able to decide if that's an issue that you would like to pursue based on your. And so I'd like to bring just kind of a simple statement out in terms of the party's belief pretty simplistically from Auburn Church. And it says, they have this thing called the Choose Life Foundation. Right? So what that does is this allows a fund for families who want to adopt, be foster parents, moms, be foster parents, moms who want to choose life but don't think they can do it alone, single parents who did choose life and need some help. Basically, what we're saying is if we choose life, we stand with it.
But for the sake of time, we need to move on to the next question.
I'd like to just say one thing. What is a woman?
Okay, final question.
Alright, hello everyone. So I just want to preface by saying GDP growth and economic prosperity are brought solely by private innovation. So neither candidate is able to just create economic prosperity and GDP growth out of nowhere, and all they can really do is hinder it. So one way the government has hindered it over the past few years is extreme budget deficits. So Trump had the largest budget deficit. Biden is approaching the largest, and neither candidates coming forward have shown any plans of reducing the budget deficit. So what can both of you say for your party that y'all are blowing the U.S. dollar out of the ceiling? And that's the main factor of the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy would be nothing without the dollar, and the candidates are short.
We will open it up to Democrats.
I think this is a great book, and I think it's absolutely critical that we all understand this. Neither candidate on the stage tonight will fix the budget for you, and that is an unfortunate reality. However, I would like to say that the best economists in the world project that Kamala at least has a chance to balance the budget. Her median estimates for what she will add to our deficit is 3.5 trillion, while Donald stands at 7.6 at a minimum. Her maximum, Kamala's maximum, is 8.1 trillion that she could possibly add to our deficit, while Donald Trump stands at an unknown figure, upwards of 16 trillion, if his tariffs had the negative effects on our economy they could. Neither candidate will fix this, but I need you to understand when I say that Donald Trump has twice as high estimates in all categories over Kamala.
We will now open it up to Republicans.
Yes, so the Republican platform, we pledge to encourage a responsible government spending. Right now, there's a lot of money circulating around that we don't know what qualifications are required to access this money and where it's going once it's granted. And so we want to encourage responsible spending. And with that being said, that means anything from infrastructure to industry and anything that has access to federal funds.
I'd also like to add that Donald Trump has made it a priority to make sure that what we are spending, it goes directly to help American citizens. You've seen that if you've been watching any Trump rallies. He's been bringing Elon Musk out, one of the wealthiest men in the world, who created several businesses from the ground up, who really wants to get in and help cut spending and make sure that spending helps American citizens, not foreigners.
So that wraps us up. Thank you all for coming out tonight.
We can leave closing statements.
Yes. Oh, yeah, closing statements.
So, essentially, we would like to really simplify this for the voters. In the next 2 weeks, you're going to be passing ballots, you're going to be voting, and you're going to be going to polls. And so, both these candidates have already shown their hand. We've lived through a Trump presidency, we've lived through a Biden-Harris administration. And I want you to think about everything that they told you was going to happen in 2015, didn't happen. And everything that they promised in 2020 is still has not happened. And so also, I want to point out that Kamala Harris did not receive a single primary Democratic election. With that being said, let's think about it this way. America is a vote for the whole, right? And so, to get out of the ocean, you have to first plug the hole, scoop out the water, and turn it over. We vote for Donald Trump as a plug in the hole, so that way we can start scooping up. A vote for Kamala Harris is shooting into the hole of the vote. I think that's all the issue.
So I think our closing statement is that Kamala Harris is the candidate to choose, not only for the economic reasons, the reasons for social issues, or even on immigration. She is the candidate to choose because she is coming from a middle-class background. She comes from historically Black University and who's a marginalized group. She's more similar to us than she is develop on this.
All right.